Good evening, everyone. I am Lisha Dore, and I would like to invite you to another episode of One on One, where we bring to you some of the best minds in Trinidad and Tobago. Today, April the 28th, marks exactly 1 year since the United National Congress Coalition of Interest secured a resounding victory at the polls. And the UNC coalition would have gone into office with a clear mandate to transform Trinidad and Tobago. Tonight, we extend a hearty congratulations to the Honorable Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar and the UNC Coalition of Interest government on completing what I would describe as a successful first year in office. Over the past 12 months, the government have focused on some key national priorities, such as job creation, economic stability, social equity, national security, and governance reform. And importantly, what we saw this administration doing is delivering a very strong legislative record in its first year. A review of the Parliament's output would show that 18 acts have been passed in 1 year, with 6 additional bills currently under debate. As reported by the Honorable Prime Minister at last Saturday's jam-packed UNC Congress, 15,000 jobs were created in the first year. A 10% wage increase was delivered, and that would have impacted almost 40,000 workers across the country. There's a measurable improvement in national security, with murders down 42%, serious crimes down 30%, and violent crimes down 32%. The economy has also been stabilized, with growth projected at 3% in the coming year. So those are just some of the key highlights coming out of the first year of the UNC Coalition of Interest government. Looking ahead, the Prime Minister has made it very clear that year 2, what we should be seeing is more focus on job creations, stronger economic growth, and also a very firm, uncompromising response to criminal activity. So tonight, we mark 1 year of UNC in government, and we ask the critical question: how is the administration really performing, and what lies ahead? Joining us for this important discussion are political analyst Dr. Shane Mohammed and veteran journalist Mr. Ken Ali, absolutely no stranger to our platform. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all our viewers who are joining us on Zoom and social media, as well as members of the media who will be tuning in. We are absolutely thrilled to have all of you here with us. As always, we want to make this session as interactive as possible, so we encourage you to actively participate. I'm seeing the regulars now coming onto the social media feed and a few joining us on Zoom. Anyone who wants to come on the Zoom to interact directly with Ken and Dr. Mohammed, please feel free. Right? Feel free to use the chats to share your comments, your questions. Those of you on the Zoom, please raise your hand if you want to participate. So without further ado, I would like to pass the mic over to my co-moderator, Dr. Rogers, to give his opening remarks and kick off tonight's conversation.
Good evening, Lisha. Good evening to our two esteemed guests. Thank you once again for accepting the invitation to come on, and to our listeners and members of the media. I would start the conversation by saying early on, I described the Prime Minister's approach to leadership, and I drew the comparison to the former British PM, Margaret Thatcher. And I actually said her leadership style was akin to the Iron Lady of the Caribbean. This is because we have seen the firm decisions that need to be made, they were actually made, that created the platform from which Trinidad and Tobago could develop. As you indicated, Lisha, our growth this year was about 0.8%, and next year it is 3%. And this is according to the IMF, I believe. That 3% is very significant when compared to other economies of our size. And it says that, as the saying goes, and it was coined on Saturday, good things are coming. So, with that being said, I also would have done a study in the agricultural sector that says that the basis for development is clearly evident in terms of the uptake in production and the slightly lowering of prices. And I think this, from the statistical point of view, is actually where we need to be. And this development actually paves the way where we could realistically see 3% and hopefully beyond in 2027. So at this stage, that's my opening remarks. I would like to pass the mic on to either Dr. Mohammed or Mr. Ali, either one. You could feel free to go ahead.
Maybe Dr. Mohammed first?
Ken, go ahead.
Okay, all right. Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Alicia, Donnie, Shane. Good evening to you. Good evening to your many listeners and viewers. I'm always thrilled, Alicia, to be on your program. I'm very grateful to be on. I have a lot of regard for you. I tell you that all the time. And I'm very happy and proud to be associated with your work. Well, a lot has been said. A year has gone, and there has been a lot of analysis. My own thinking on this is that we have to look at the large picture, because some things take a longer gestation period. For example, trade and industry. The matter of investments take a little while. It doesn't happen overnight. So it's difficult to judge, let's say, a reduction in crime or economic issues or social welfare matters or even foreign policy with some, compare one with the other, and some of those with other areas of national development. I think the key thing that I look at is the purpose the government has set in terms of what it is doing. The critical agenda of performance, legislative agenda, and the work ethic generally. And I see tremendous purpose. And that resonates in many things, whether it is, and a primary area, of course, is a matter of national security. We have seen not only the 42% reduction in homicides, which is critical, of course, but we have also seen, and not enough in the national discussion is said about that, the matter of our border protection. We had wide open borders, which led Trinidad and Tobago. There's not enough discussion in this country about how bad drug trafficking was in this country. We were a critical area in the Western Hemisphere for drug trafficking from Colombia, Peru, and so on, of course, via Venezuela, wide open ports, and so coming through several ports. According to a parliamentary committee report, there are 123 wide open ports in this country, from Toco to the Gulf of Paria, and so on. And that spawned an underground economy worth billions of dollars. And it included drug trafficking, of course, money laundering. There's a critical area of money laundering taking place. And I want to say this, I want to say very guardedly, that some, and I repeat, some of the small businesses you're seeing closing has to do with the lack. No, I'm very cautious in what I'm saying here. Of course, I don't mean all at all. But if you read the reports of the FIU, the Financial Intelligence Unit, they tell you about this, and this is public information, so I'm just repeating some of it. In some sectors, maybe I shouldn't identify these sectors, but there are some retail sectors where there is a lot of that taking place. And these are official reports. So I'm not saying anything that is confidential or anything. So there's that underground economy, which has fueled several things. The drug trafficking, of course, has brought with it the weapons trade. The weapons get into the hands of the gangsters and they kill each other for turf. So all of that is interlocked. The previous government made no effort in terms of securing the borders. In fact, in the 2015 manifesto of the PNM, on page 17, I remember it well, and there is a promise of a border security agency That never took place. So that is a critical area. The fact that the government aligned itself with the U.S. maritime attacks on drug trafficking and the other measures that have been taken. Ministers Alexander Sturge and Devesh Maharaj have been talking on that issue. So that's a critical area of achievement in the first year, and one expects that there will be continued development on that. Also, that spawned a wide wealth gap in this country, which is probably the historically wide. The Prime Minister has spoken of the fake elites. Mr. Pandey used to talk of the parasitic oligarchy and so on. So this is a critical area. The Prime Minister has enormous resolve on that, for which I praise her to the skies. So those are areas of accomplishments, and they're in every sector. You see it with social welfare, you see it with education, and the emphasis on education, and health sector, the hospital, and so on. And we could identify all of them. The Prime Minister spoke of some. Alicia, in your opening remarks, you did also. But I just want to generalize the issue for a while to say that there is advancement in virtually in every sector. And I'll conclude this opening remark by saying this. We have to contextualize what is taking place against what the government met. The government met an economy that had declined by about 30% over the previous 9.5 years. We know national security situation. We reached 624 homicides in 2024, making us the sixth most violent country per capita in the whole wide world, right? With all these travel advisories from the developed world and so on. So there have been measurable achievements in every area. But the overall thrust is that there is achievement and under the direction, and there's a clear and firm and decisive direction from the Honorable Prime Minister. So I think the government has performed extremely well in its first year.
Thank you for that very much, Ken. So, Dr. Mohammed, you are a controversial person. We know you, right? You have a reputation of being quite controversial, So we're really, and I see you're under a lot of fire. You've been under a lot of fire recently, right? That's something we want to get into in this program, because I find that whole thing very, very interesting, right? But let's get your views. Has the government demonstrated strong and effective leadership in its first year?
Well, that goes without saying, because in my controversial behavior, the government is led by someone who I have said both locally and internationally demonstrates a level and has demonstrated a level of resilience that has been unmatched. It is unmatched resilience in the region. It is unmatched resilience that has never been seen before. And I say that in my poetry is because we see a comeback of never have been seen before in this kind of in this context and in this side of the world. When you compare it to other regional leaders in the past, you literally, this was someone who took the years that, and I give credit because the consistency in the conversation from day one, from the day the oath was taken when the Prime Minister became the Prime Minister again, to this very day, the conversation has not changed. There's consistency in the language. There's resolve in the language. There is a high level of authenticity in the language. And therefore, I have a serious appreciation for the level of adaptiveness of the Prime Minister. In 2024, when the tide was changing in the United States, I had issued a call for both the former Prime Minister then and the current Prime Minister to pay special attention to their foreign policy and what it would look like in order to position Trinidad and Tobago within direct sight of that changing tide. And fortunately, only one person took serious heed to it, and we are now benefiting from that. And I've said over the months, as you all know, that I am very, very pleased by the foreign policy position of Trinidad and Tobago, that we are in direct sight. We're not on the periphery. We don't have to look around for somebody to look for us. We're in sight. And when you're in direct sight, there's a huge level of benefits that come from it, both politically, socially, economically. And therefore, the government is led by a very strong leader and one who has stood the test of time. I always say it, do not underestimate the lady. Her political wit, her thinking, her tactfulness, her strategy is unmatched and should never be underestimated. I even said that to the PNM. Do not underestimate Kamla Persad-Bissessar, and don't try to think for her, and don't try to attempt to dictate her or to push her, because she will respond in a way that one does not even think it's possible. I remember former Minister Terence Dial Singh looking at me and admitting the brilliance of Kamla Persad-Bissessar from his experience as well, and in his own eyes, was something that could not be questioned. So therefore, the strength of the government, when you talk about the strength of the whole, it comes from the strength of the thing or the individual, the entity that is leading it. And therefore, the government is led by very strong, authentic, competent, resilient leadership that remains steadfast. And I think that from the very first speech, the speech at the inauguration, the speech that was made when the cabinet was appointed, the speech that was made in the 100 days of the government, the speech that was made on Saturday are all consistent speeches. What you see is what you get. There's never been a delineation or deviation of what the intention and the vision for Trinidad and Tobago was. And therefore, it's not like today we could say we got cat in bag. And credit has to be given for the strength of the leadership that leads the whole. Bottom line.
I want to follow up with a question. How would you say KPB 2.0 is different from KPB 1.0? And can I also want to get your opinion on that?
There are similarities in terms of compassion, the strength of the ability to demonstrate the compassion, the ability to show care, to show concern. But in this 2.0 KPB, there's a level of understanding of what the position of Prime Minister requires. It is not management, it is leadership. It is not about ebbing and weaving, but standing strong and still taking the position and not moving from the position. It is the ability to look around, read the room, and understand the circumstances and the context that one is faced with, and hold strong to the belief system. So there's a level of strength. The word that I could find at this stage, there's a level of strength that is displayed openly in a way that is unapologetic, and that unapologetic strength, that was the word. You see, there's also an element of she's not intimidated. That ability to look at something, stand up, say it out loud. She's unhinged, which I absolutely love, because I think when you are unhinged, the truth is really and truly is what you see, and that's where the authenticity is even elevated. So there's a strength in the lady, and Donnie said it. He made reference to Thatcher. In another article, I made reference to Golda Meir, and to Merkel. So when you have a combination of these characteristics that is being emulated in one individual, it's something that I have an appreciation for from a leadership perspective. So very much a stronger personality, a very resolved personality, unapologetic, and is very determined to finish what was incomplete, but also followed on the legacy projects. And that is, I have an appreciation for the fact that take ownership of what is yours. You earned it, you're entitled to it.
Okay, thank you so much, Ken. So I would like you to weigh in on that. You know, we are seeing, I want to say, a bolder style of leadership this time around, right? So how is KPB 2.0 different from what we saw between 2010 and 2015?
First, I think there is more in common with the first term than there isn't. And let me say first that there was a great performance record in the first 5 years of deliverables, quite a lot. I think one key factor that one could point that could be a measurable difference is that she's unaffected by reckless criticism. And she has shown and repeatedly indicated that, as she did again on Saturday, that she is not impacted negatively, not rattled by reckless, ill-informed attacks. And that shows in her management of national affairs and also the matters of regional matters, all that is happening in CARICOM and international affairs. So I think that's a critical aspect. She's very focused. Another thing is, and well, there was a lot of this in the first term, but I took note at the statement she made at swearing in that the country does not end at the lighthouse. And we have seen, as she did in the first term, but maybe with a greater resolve this term also, of looking after national development beyond urban centers. And as has been an issue the PNM has been guilty of historically. It's an urban, almost elite organization, and it has neglected central and south communities, whether in infrastructure. We see what the roads became, we see what led to floods, we see under Manning's time, the destruction of the sugar industry, under Rowley's time, the shutdown of Petrotrin, and so on and so forth. At first rain, we could have been assured of floods. And we saw what happened within months of the new administration coming in and the infrastructure work. In fact, yesterday I was driving on the Butler Highway and I saw on the lane, outside the opposite lane, we saw early dredging. And that, of course, is yes. Now, that, of course, the most low-lying area of the country. It leads to the Caroni swamplands and so on. And that requires dredging on an ongoing basis. And so you see a lot of preventative measures. But that, again, I want to say is a continuation of what she did. But it's good to see the return of that resolve, because as someone who lives in the south of the country, I could tell you about the pain of the neglect in terms of floods, lack of jobs, the infrastructure. I don't think the PNM government really understood how it impacted the country by the reckless shutdown of Petrotrin. And that has impacted the fence line communities. It impacted all those engineers. A lot of them fled to other places, and we've lost a lot of institutional memory. Some went to the UAE and those eastern countries. Some went to Venezuela, I suppose, Guyana, Suriname, some went to Texas, Angola, and so on. And we've lost that whole cadre of knowledge that was important to keeping that. And that refinery, people who don't know the industry don't know there are several plants there. The cat crack and the optimization plant and so on and so forth. We've lost all of that through the recklessness of the previous administration. And it is a tribute to the Honorable Prime Minister and her administration that is a matter on the timetable for reopening, and one anticipates that even if it's a phased reopening, within the next few months. So I see a continued resolve to all around the national development. And some of it, maybe there are some nuances that are different from the first term, but one thing that strikes me easily is that she's not easily impacted by the senseless criticism. There's a lot of noise in the society. Trinidad is a very noisy society, and social media has facilitated that even more. I don't think she's easily rattled by that.
Ken, you raised a point. Manning was responsible for the closure of the sugar industry, and PM Rowley would have been responsible for Petrotrin. And whilst we are seeing in this term here, in the first year, where the announcement was made for the phased reopening of Petrotrin, we also have to remember that the major announcement was made where the Brechin Castle estate is going to be opened. From information that I have, I think very early next month, we're going to get a wonderful surprise in that regard. And that is something we have to look forward to. So the two most iconic areas or aspects of Trinidad industry is sugar and oil and gas. And we are seeing in 1 year announcements made and work actually being done towards the reopening of these two. So that as well must be commended at this stage.
We should also acknowledge the tremendous achievements to date and the anticipated achievements in the energy sector and principally in natural gas. There has been an increase because of some deep water finds and deep water further explorations. So we've seen that. But in addition to that, the ExxonMobil work that is taking place, the Shell, the BP, we anticipate the Lauren Manatee, they call it Manatee Plus, and so on. So there is a lot of excitement in the energy sector about increased production. Now, increased production would permit Train 4 of the ALNG plant to come on stream. Most importantly for us to get commodity production again at Point Lisas. What has happened there, the mothballing of some of those plants has been very distressing. And we see a plan in terms of increased gas production, and we anticipate that sometime late next year, because of all the pots that are on the fire, we would increase dramatically a sustained increase in natural gas production, which has all good bearings for a revival of commodity production, ALNG, and the implications of job creation and downstream activities.
I want to hinge off of what Ken just said. And, the thing about it is that's one of the most important parts of the recovery of Trinidad and Tobago from what the PNM did in 2018 with regard to the refinery and the oil and gas sector. And the root of that is recognizing from the prime ministerial perspective how to navigate this ship and how to position us in the eyesight to make sure that the strategic decisions were made and the right foreign policy was created in order to gather the attention and to gain the attention of those influential persons that were going to be participants and stakeholders in this whole sector. And then the work that was done by the line minister as well in ensuring that there was a drive-through. So that synchronization is also very critical and very important. And the vision is something that is very rich, and the experience that is on the table in that regard, coming out of the two personalities that create this new revitalization of the sector is something that we wondered at one point in time if it was ever going to happen, and it is a very remarkable thing to have a report and have reporting that says that this is happening in a matter of 12 months to 14 months to 16 months to 18 months. So the positioning of Trinidad and Tobago, what the government has done and what the Prime Minister has done is literally, there was a burden, there's a darkness that the society was feeling, a level of hopelessness is the word I want to use. But she has redirected us to say, look, we will do this, and we are doing it now. And there's a lifting of that darkness and that anxiety that people felt from a social political perspective that is really a remarkable thing. It gives people the expectation of what is next to come in the years ahead and the months ahead.
Yeah, the manifesto promises quite a lot, including a reshaping of the society, really, and diversification of the economy. And Rowley and Manning before him, Manning had been talking about diversification with respect to several things, including the maritime sector and so on, and they talk the talk, and it achieved nothing. There's a greater urgency now at the countries, the matter of trade and industries in the hands of a successful private sector achiever. And one anticipates that we would get those investments. But of course, as I said at the start, there is a gestation period. But Trinidad and Tobago has all the hallmarks to attract investment. Now, under the PNM, there's an ECLAC report, Economic Commission for Latin America, that said that we were in the last recent years, we were losing investments at the rate of $1.5 billion a year. And we recall things like even like non-energy. Remember, Lever Brothers left us after all these years, after providing all these jobs. And there were several, ArcelorMittal, of course, and there's some companies that came in the hospitality sector, and they slipped me now, and so on. All of them that provided jobs and downstream and opportunities, like in some of them for farmers and so on, left. And so there was a huge drain in investments in the country. The PNM government was unable to attract that. Now we anticipate investments coming in. We recall investments that came in the first 5 years of Mrs. Prasad Bises's administration. One that I remember all the time when I drive down the highway is Unicoma, with the parent company of Quartz, which came, set up that massive structure and diversified. It went into so many other things outside of furniture and so on, eyeglasses and so on. All of that provided opportunities for employment, including professionals. So there was all of that. One anticipates now, especially, well, maybe I shouldn't say especially, but including our warm relations with the US, the world's largest economy, which is also in this hemisphere, not far from us, speak the same language as us and so on, that we will get investments in energy and outside of energy. That would stoke the economy in a more serious way, create opportunities, and again, provide opportunities for jobs and ancillary activities.
Agreed.
All right, if I could turn the attention now to national security. Crime statistics show that crime is going down, right? As I would have said in my opening, murders are down 42%, serious crimes are down 30%, and violent crimes are down 32%, right? This is what the official statistics show. Yet there is a perception or a feeling then that people are not any safer or communities are not any safer. So I would like to get your insights on why the reality on the ground does not match what these statistics are saying.
You see, the thing about it, Lisha, is that visibility is very important. And responsiveness is very important. And I know that the work of the police service is very much cut out for them in terms of not just leadership, but organizational transformation. And that's very important in this regard. And like, take, for example, Ken was talking about, living and driving down and up the highway tells a different story for those who have the ability to and has the opportunity to see that, right? That is one of the things that also is very critical about UNC administration's past, that the vision, when you drive, you could see there is evidence of work that is getting done and development that happens, right? But one of the most important things as well is that, remember when the highway was created and it was expanded in the first administration between 2015, when they created those spots in the middle of the highway where you had the police vehicles that were going to be parked there. There was a point in time they disappeared. They became a spot for accidents. All of the lights that were set up for with the solar energy panels and all of that, they were destroyed. They were never redone. But the other night I was driving down the highway, and one of the things that was reassuring, because I have anxiety on the highway. I have serious anxiety about driving on the highway. And seeing lights of the police cars parked at strategic locations all the way down was a level of reassurance. So much so was the level of reassurance. I'm not bluffing and trying to butter it up, but there were vehicles that needed to stop on the side of the road. And you know that people felt comfortable because the light was within sight, right? And that you saw vehicles passing. So I think in this instance, there needs to be some creative and innovative strategies as it pertains to the organizational transformation of the service in terms of turning it from reactionary to proactive, but also from driven from a perspective of service orientation. It's protect and serve. But remember, the culture has to change because time has changed as well. And we have to become more innovative with strategies. So I think visibility is very important. Responsiveness is very important. I think many, many years ago, the judiciary went through a transformation where they introduced the word customer service into the system, where they were treating litigants and those that walked into the courthouses as citizens and had them present themselves to customer service officers who would facilitate what the need was and the inquiry and what sort. That level of customer service is also required for those who are in the police service. So therefore, I would suggest police service be trained in customer service as it pertains to those that are walking in. That you can still be able to feel a sense of discipline when you see a police officer, but at the same time, you feel as if when you approach a police officer, you would get a response that gives you an assurance or a security feeling of some sort. So I think strategies are very important. Ken, this is your field, but I think communication could be ramped up. I think it's very important. I mean, Lisha, you know, we spoke about that. I think it is important in politics that when you fight for power and you win, the fight doesn't end when you win. That the conversation must continue. The people that were the warriors on the keyboards and doing the job has to be able to balance the opportunities that have been given to them in government, because I have an appreciation for that, but also on the flip side, the political duty that cannot lapse in order to strike the balance. Because Ken rightfully said there's a lot of people making noise. It irritates sometimes that I can't respond as I would like to. In a past life I would have. But the thing is, I think strategies are very important. Communication is very critical. And in the age where discernment because of AI and technology is dwindling, even at an academic level, people like Ken, who has the expertise like yourself, who have been in this thing for such a long time, what your roles and responsibilities are important to carry the message. But I think even in that security arena, communication is very critical. Customer service orientation is very critical. Visibility is very important. And innovative strategies will help to give the citizens the assurances that they need. I think that's not a hard thing to do, though.
A very, very comprehensive answer, right? So you think it's more about, I mean, just to put it in layman's terminology, the police just has to do a bit more to reassure the population, to make them
Present.
safe, because, although the reality is, in fact, that crime is going down. It's just a human thing about making people feel safe. And I get you with that. Can you have anything to add to that?
Indeed. Well, that was the first point I was going to make. That you couldn't move from 624 homicides and several other brazen attacks and bloody crimes and so on, without people remaining apprehensive and fearful. So that's a fact. It takes a while, because if there's a 42% decrease in homicides as there is, people must, as of necessity, understand that they're safer than they were. So that's the first thing. But that was one area here, the matter of trauma that the country went through in over several years. But we talk about 2024 because it was the highest murder rate. So that's one. In addition to that, it has been 1 year. Things are coming into groove in several areas. One is the provision of adequate resources. The borders are being strengthened because of the purchase and so on of the required Coast Guard vessels. And the resources that we hear the minister speaking about and the prime minister with respect to the police service, they're getting more vehicles, more arms, more use of intelligence gathering, and more equipment and so on. And while we're in intelligence gathering, I paused there for a second, because intelligence gathering was a critical factor in solving the crime with respect to the murder of Ms. Eversley. All right. So we must congratulate them for that intelligence gathering and so on. Surveillance has been improved. So all of that, but we must also remember there are measures in the works. The stand your ground legislation is, over time coming into play, because it has a lot to do with the provision of legal firearms and so on. So that is one area. In addition to all of that, as Shane says, the matter of communicating that. Oh, and I was also coming to the point that violence had become a first medium for many people to resolve conflicts, and crimes of passion would be very difficult to resolve. The country needs a reset. And that would have to do with a lot of things like education, socialization, and so on. But when some people feel the way to solve a crime over a land dispute is to chop up their neighbor, it is really difficult for law enforcement to prevent that. So the society needs to be moderated, and that will take place over a period of time with more hands-on and sympathetic, empathetic leadership. We had a prime minister who would almost use violent language at every turn and hostile and so on. And there needs to be a reset, and those things don't happen immediately. And Trinidad and Tobago is, as the prime minister correctly said, not in a zone of peace because of the drug trafficking. That, I heard Minister Sturd saying as recently as last week, between 60 and 70% of murders are caused by the drug trade and turf war, gang turf war, whether it's this gang fighting the other one and so on and so on. So all of that is being dealt with. So one anticipates the figures will get better, and the sense of peace and comfort will return, maybe in a staggered manner over a period of time.
Yeah. I remember Trinidad and Tobago where you didn't have to lock your doors.
Indeed, yeah.
Or any day or night, you're out late at night and you're not worried at all. But that's a very, very different Trinidad from where we are at now. It would be great for us
But
to
it is important, Alicia, to also acknowledge that throughout the Caribbean, there's a lot of violent crime. Trinidad and Tobago is tackling it. But for small islands like St. Vincent and St. Kitts and all those small islands, the crime rate, the murder rate has shot up tremendously again, largely because of the flow of drugs. The market for illicit drugs is huge, especially in Europe. And that explains the go fast boats that use this as a transshipment point. Some offload their cargo in the eastern coastline of the US, but many go to Europe. And if you've noted, the US agencies that are involved in helping us here, the DEA and others, they have made busts in the high seas as far as Portugal. They've tracked vessels delivering drugs as far more, and that confirms the reports by the U.S. State Department and other agencies that Trinidad and Tobago is a transshipment port, and they've said it in the reports. Chagaramas is a key area where they use a lot of the yachts and so on, and that remained in the PNM unprotected. And when there were all these reports, the government did absolutely nothing about that. So all of those matters have been dealt with through provision of equipment, resources, policing, intelligence, surveillance, and all of those things. So one anticipates we'll continue to get positive results.
Yes. I want to read a comment from Richard. He says, Go Titi would get a passing grade. They've been managing the challenges they inherited and also the challenges they have encountered on their journey. There would always be room for improvement and all are welcome. Now, the Prime Minister always says that, and all of the ministers, in fact, the Prime Minister always acknowledges that there is more to be done. So, and we know that all the problems that were inherited and that came about because of decades of mismanagement, neglect, corruption, and so on, is not going to be fixed in 12 months, right? So, Richard,
Indeed.
I want to thank you for that comment, right? Just doing a quick time check. It is 8:51. I'm seeing Senator the Honorable Brian Begg online with us. Senator, if at any point in time you want to intervene, feel free, right? Special good evening to all of you on social media. I am seeing a couple comments. I'm not seeing any questions though, but if you guys do have any questions for our panelists, please just drop them on the chat, right? I would like to turn the attention now to jobs. The Prime Minister would have reported that within the first year of government, the UNC Coalition of Interest would have created 15,000 jobs. Now, there are people saying, nah, that ain't true. But she identified the number of jobs that were created in each ministry. And also, I pay a lot of attention to the news, right? Some of these would have been reported in the daily newspapers throughout the year. So this is not a fabrication, folks, right? 15,000 jobs were indeed created. So I would like to ask our panelists to just weigh in on how important is this 15,000 jobs? How significant is it to easing the pressure on citizens, giving citizens hope, and so on?
Listen, it's one of the most important parts of our society. It's also an indicator of a level of prosperity, that we are having an opportunity where job creation or the filling of spaces that was empty for many years are now filled with human minds and bodies. It is a level of progress and understanding of systems, organizational systems, the structures, the frameworks, the effectiveness that needs to go into living in human individuals in these roles, and what it translates into service towards the country. So at the end of the day, any one more job created for an individual, especially young people and semi-skilled and unskilled persons, is very critical, because we live in a world where jobs are very hard. The level of mass migration out of Trinidad and Tobago in search of jobs and opportunities was something that cannot be hidden. And the government, the former administration, cannot deny, right, that we lost a huge level, one of the largest exodus of human capacity and human resources left Trinidad and Tobago because of economic economic stagnation, and also sociological stagnation that just made people frustrated. So that's a heavy burden for this government to carry, as well as to resolve as well, right? And the fact that they could fill spaces, again, agreeing with what Ken has said, Rome was not built in a year. The bottom line is that once jobs are created and spaces are filled and people can feel that they worked or studied or they're worth something by virtue of that employment, it adds a whole different dynamic of hope and filling a gap of anxiety and frustration that can lead to so many different orientations within the social structure. So any one job created is a good thing. 15,000 even better, right? Again, I am very, 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 very appreciative of documents. So the booklet, I was very, I will ensure that I got a booklet, and the booklet is something that I wish the government could find a way to spread it out into the newspaper so people could see. For those who don't have all of
it, wasn't today's Express, huh? I'm sorry.
Okay, great, right. Yeah. So you see, that's a good thing, right? Today was a busy day, but that is important because people need to see it, and in order to put it out there, because again, what I have found is that every time, and I make no apology, and I don't care. Every time the UNC takes office, there's an upsurge in the amount of people opposing the government and its efforts, or trying to discredit it. And at the risk of sounding biased, it is what it is. That's the truth. I have experienced it from a practical perspective, have been from being in there. I am observing it from on the outside, observing what is going on. It remains consistent. And that is something that you just can't, people just don't like to see good happening. And sometimes it's very difficult for them to understand that good is taking place, because they are accustomed living in a world where chaos, where only some people benefit and not everybody.
I just want, sorry, Ken, I say one thing here.
Yeah, sure.
Recently introduced, in addition to laptops for the children, AI-powered textbooks. And
yes, yeah.
People are against that on social media.
And not only that, I'm glad you went on that point, because I want to talk a bit on the point of jobs, but I heard some of the book sellers complain about that. And I tell myself, in what world are they living? Don't they understand how the world is drifting? You know, you travel abroad, you go to the bookstores, and you see the bookstores have diversified into other things because the number of books that are being, people are consuming books on their devices and so on. So it is about adapting for the modern work environment. And I'd use that as a takeoff to address the point of jobs that you talk about. In fact, first let me say, yesterday started these jobs for the cleaning of the public spaces, and the government must be commended for that. A lot of jobs have been provided, and jobs are continued to be provided for special purposes. Remember, the revitalization plan is coming, and that will provide construction jobs and employment jobs. Less than a week ago, there was the launch of a project for $220 million for construction of a Hilton in San Fernando. That will provide how many construction jobs and full-time sustainable jobs. Plus, I must always remember hotels provide opportunities for taxi drivers, for people who barmen, for people, farmers and delivery people and so on and so forth. But a key point of all of this is that a previous UNC administration, in fact, going back to Mr. Pandey, was about developing Trinidad as a skilled modern society. And the PNM, whenever it gets into office, it reverses that and goes into this corruption-riddled CPEP and URP, where, in fact, I got some documents and I wrote about the level of the corruption when the government had changed. And there was extensive corruption with party hacks and so on, getting contracts and so on and so forth. There was a lot of that. The Prime Minister's vision has always been, and we remember it from in fact, Mr. Pandey, let me again pay homage to him and what he did, and his commitment was a learned modern society. Mrs. Prasad Bisesa also, that was her manifesto aim, and that's what she did, and that's where the laptops and the development of more schools and more opportunities and more scholarships and bursaries and the gate and all of those, and construction of the Debe campus and so on, was all about developing skills. If we have to bring in investors and a modern society, the society is technologically driven. In fact, AI now is a major force in several sectors. We can't be doing that with a workforce whose skills are only in CPEP and URP. The PNM already destroyed, as I said before. And as a Southerner, I'm a Southerner, I tell you the pain people feel about the shutdown of Petrotrin, not only how it impacted defense line communities. I have friends who shut down the business. A friend of mine shut down his tire shop and so on. But what we also lost is that institutional knowledge that passed on from generation to generation in chemical engineering and so on and so forth. Because of that, fewer people going to the campus now, the Faculty of Engineering at UE and so on. So there was a sharp reversal in the acquisition of skills and knowledge under the PNM. This government sees things differently. If we are, as a small island, we in the Americas, close to the US and Canada, close to South America and so on, if we have to develop a modern economy, it has to be on developing skills. And we could see that revitalization has started.
Yes, yes, because we are in the AI age, you
yes.
know? So we have to train and develop our AI skills within the workforce. That goes without saying, you know. That's
you know, Alicia, in my field as a journalist, and I tell people that is, I'm not saying it's dying, but it is being reformatted. So we see newspapers shutting down. Look what happened to Newsday, look what happened to Starbrook News, and so on. So you have to meet the moment. You have to utilize the modern technology. And so New York Times and other newspapers are sustaining themselves by modernizing. And we've got to modernize all areas of economy. The manufacturing sector has to do that if they have to be competitive in price and with their exports and so on.
Yes. I see Senator Begg has his hand up. Senator, you want to come in?
Good night, everyone, and good night, Ken and
Hi,
Dr.
Brian.
Shane Mohammed. You know, I always,
Senator Lee.
I always say Shane is always a dear friend to me, and I've listened carefully to what you all have been saying, and yeah, you all are making some very good, valid points. I am very happy and pleased to be part of this government, and today, yes, we make a year as a government, and the one thing, and I have to say, is in the achievements that we have done in just 1 year. If we talk about crime, and yes, one of the major issues, I think Ken talked about it, was that the murder rate historically has dropped to 42%. But if we also look at crime statistics, in that serious crimes also dropped to 30%. And violent crimes went down to 32%. We also ensured as a government that the one way to fight crime is that you have to establish the position of the commissioner of police. And we have a commissioner of police, I have to say, is a man who is very much hands-on, very much takes the bull by the horns. She also, in that of dealing with crime, was dealing with national security. In that, what she did is that she brought about one, the ministry, she put the Ministry of National Security into three ministries. The Ministry of Defense, which is Minister Sturge, Ministry of Homeland Security, which is Minister Roger Alexander, who has been hitting the ground running. And then we have the Ministry of Justice, which Shane should very much be aware of the Ministry of Justice. And I'm happy that the Ministry of Justice was brought about as a practicing attorney at law. And we are seeing that there are a lot of changes that are coming. And it shows that you have to have what is called political will to fight crimes. And there was no political will before. And that is a fact. On the way that crime was on the increase for 10 years. Where the point where crime went as far as 600. It was becoming a cricket score. And we have to understand that. And we also must understand as a government what we have done with our manifesto promises. In just 1 year, look at what we have achieved. If we look at the workers' agenda, and Ken would hold me out on this, in that the one thing the Prime Minister talked about is that public servants will receive what is due to them. Public servants receive their 10%. We have also daily rated employees, and I am proud to talk about it. I come from that. I was once a daily rated employee. I came from the local government sector. And we also let's talk about other things with that of the workers' agenda. The TTRA is no more. That was a promise made, promise delivered. I was pleased to be part of that debate. And even if we go back to crime, I'm a victim of crime myself. And I was pleased and honored to be part of the debate in dealing with the home invasions. That law is now there. And if I just go very quickly, I don't want to take up much time. We as a government, we came in, we saw what we met. We met a country in shackles, economically and otherwise. We went and we first thing we came in as well is open the children's hospital. And look at what the report the Prime Minister gave, and that the children's hospital is up and running. Right? We also showed up with education, where the laptop programs has been brought in. And the one thing, when last you see a school fight? Let's be real, Ken. When last you seen a school fight? Because we dealt with it. Yes, we put the police in the schools, and the Prime Minister took it upon and said that it's going to happen. Now there are parents who are telling this government that they are happy that this was done. So there's so much more I would love to talk about. But I will say this. This year it makes me 26 years with the United National Congress. I became a member of this party in the year 2000. I became a life member in the year 2007. I joined the National Youth and Wit. Shane, I can say it. Shane
you
Mohammed and
can.
I was members of a national youth arm of the United
That's true.
National Congress.
That's very true.
And what I have seen with the UNC is that we have seen the UNC. We won an election in 1995. We won an election in 2000. We beat the PNM in 2010. We beat the PNM in 2025. We have been beating them in local elections as well. 37 years the UNC has marked, and we must never, ever make people forget that. That the United National Congress is the one party that has always been dynamic, has always been able to bring proper governance, and we have a prime minister in this country, a lady I am so happy to work with. And that's why I'm hoping to get better very soon, because I am missing doing the people's work in the parliament. And all I will say is this, is that I want the people of Trinidad to be, take what the Prime Minister said on Saturday. Better days are coming. Hold some strain. We are fixing this country, and better things are going to come. It's nice hearing you all tonight. And, you know, just before I go, I must say this. I was happy the Prime Minister paid homage to a gentleman that Shane and I know very well. I think Ken would know him as well. It's a man by the name of Don Sylvester.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
A
Yeah.
man who has never, ever left the UNC. A man who stood with the United National Congress, stood with the current leader, and he always would call her boss lady. Even when she was prime minister, he was always call her boss lady because he said, "Use the boss." This week will be his funeral, and I will say, Don. So I knew Don even from the days of the National Youth Arm, and Don will be severely and sorely missed. And I just want to pay some condolences, as well as for those of you who don't know, Dr. Fuad Khan lost his brother today, Mr.
Oh, no.
Abhi Khan.
Last
Uh,
night, last
yeah,
evening.
last evening. A man who I know for years, where my mother and him, we knew each other well when he was working at the Ministry of Works. So I want to give condolences to Dr. Khan and his family. And the one thing I can always say is that we must remember those who have been here. And I say to my brother Don, we will see you again. So I say good night to you all, and that's why I have to cherish my life and get back 100% better. Take care.
Senator, we miss you very much. Yeah, I mean, I know you come on the program as a guest now, you know, and give us your little 2 cents, but we miss having you as a panelist. So we're really looking forward to you getting back
I'll be back soon. Don't worry.
back to your normal self. But thank you so much for that contribution. Guys, it's 9:09. Donnie, you have anything further? I know we
Yeah. I actually wanted to raise a point here. When we're talking about employment, there's an area in which I think is very, very important to mention. Now, we are aware that, you know, the Indian government would have done $1 million US in equipment for us for agro-processing. Now, and the announcement was made that that is coming on stream with the Brechin Castle estate. Now, when we look, and I can't go too much into that, but when you look at the capacity of commercial agro-processing equipment, what that is going to do is, when this is launched, it is going to open up very significant avenues for self-employment with farmers to increase production, and also for people to augment their income and supplement their income by going into production of vegetables and fruits, because that is what these lines, you know, will be doing. And I'm sure on the launch of that, the technocrats will go into a little bit of detail with regards to the capacity and the requirements for raw material now. And once there's a requirement for raw material that is a primary material, it will significantly increase the amount of persons who could engage in self-employment, and also those who could engage in supplementing their income. Because we also know there's a lot of people who have these 2 acres that were given under Carrying Limited and stuff like that, and they're not doing anything. Now, I've heard talk about mangoes and those sorts of things. Those are crops that you could put on 2 acres, and really and truly doesn't require much maintenance. But over time, it will bring an income that you could use to supplement your household income. So I think over the next year, we are going to see a lot more avenues open up, not just for full-time 8 to 4 jobs, but also in areas of self-employment as it relates to production to fit the requirements for these machines and these undertakings that the ministry and by extension the prime minister has undertaken.
Okay, can I say a few things? A lot has transpired here. I want to first, Brian, it's great. I don't know if Brian is still there, but it's great to hear Brian's voice. And look after yourself, Brian. You've made, I've worked with Brian, many years ago, and he's made a major contribution in various areas. He was a chair of a state enterprise and so on. So I wish you the best. Also, I'm happy that Brian and all of you brought up Don Sylvester's name. I too knew Don and knew I could count him as a friend. He was really a wonderful person, very hardworking, resilient, loyal, committed. He was served for a long time, I think as vice chair of the National Carnival Commission. He was heavily into the culture and so on. He made an immeasurable contribution. May he rest in peace. A couple points arising from the recent discussion. One, Donnie, taking off on your discussion on agriculture, a lot of credit must be given to the Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Minister Ravi Rathiram. We must remember what the principal aim at this point is to bring down that food import bill from a historic high of $7.3 billion, $7.3 billion. And I keep saying all the time, who are the major importers? The Virtual Cartel, while the PNM government destroyed food production in this country. Former arable lands are now occupied by shopping malls and franchise stores of fast foods that is killing us and so on. So congratulations to the minister and his team in terms of what they're doing. I just wanted to make one or two other brief points. One is housing. A lot of activity is taking place. I think the PNM government in almost 10 years delivered about 4,700 houses, 4,700. The waiting list of applicants now is about 228,000. And the PNM mishandled housing in a tremendous way. This new measure that the Housing Development Corporation is undertaking, design, build, finance, will not incur any cost from taxpayers, not any public funds at all. And the critics are deliberately hiding that fact. But there is no cost to taxpayers. Just to make that point, and the final point, at least for now, is, and this really is not directly related to the first year in government, but it reflects on the previous year, or the 6 months of that last fiscal year, and I'm referring to the Auditor General's report, which has again uncovered a lot of financial wrongdoing, a lot again, the media hasn't fully reported that. I wrote about one matter with respect to housing. Others have reported on several other things. The Guardian has a story on it. But the Auditor General, in short, has reported on lack of accountability and transparency, misuse of funds, and so on and so forth. Again, that is the public's purse. And if you remember that the previous year, there were matters pertaining to about $3 billion, right, from the Auditor General's report, for which the PNM government has not properly accounted for, of course, which they won't account for. So the Auditor General continues to uncover and expose financial wrongdoing under the PNM administration. So those are about the key points arising from the recent discussion.
If I may, just Ken raised a very good point with the housing there. And yes, Ken and I did work together for a point in time as well.
Yeah.
With the housing under the PNM, there was really no real delivery of housing under the People's National Movement. In fact, Faris Al-Rawi tried a tactic in San Fernando West by having this big ceremony for giving of houses in an area in San Fernando West. And lo and behold, when these persons was collecting keys, it was then realized that the persons had to give back the keys. And during the campaign, when Dr. Dollar was walking in that area, there was no people in the houses area. And that was what you call gimmick. They tried an election gimmick. They even tried it in St. Joseph, but it backfired on them as well. And that is why the people of San Fernando West rejected Farris. And that is why the people of St. Joseph rejected Terrence Dialsing. And with Dr. David Lee, Minister of Housing, you heard exactly the plans that he set out on Saturday. And I have no doubt that it will be carried out. So I mean, Ken is right. The PNM has no real history with deliverables, especially when it comes to housing. None whatsoever.
Yeah, and we must also add to that and remind the population that they gave houses to the now former St. Vincent Prime Minister's family of Ralph Gonzalez, And I was also reading some of the documents. The PNM was building houses. The few houses they built at a cost of $1.5 million. So, a lot of contractors benefited. And these ought to be affordable housing, affordable people who are the working poor, and they were building houses at cost of 1.5 million, and a lot of them were not sustainable. We'll see what happened at that Trail project up in the east, which had to be torn down, a large part of that. Under the previous PNM government, we see what happened under Las Alturas, that our government did a commission of inquiry into that, and so on and so forth. So housing, the performance is as dismal as it is in every other sector.
There's no doubt, folks, at the end of the day, there's no doubt that Keith Rowley's government it encouraged and facilitated institutional disintegration. And when you listen to the Prime Minister talk about 228,000 applicants, if you take that 228,000 applicants and divide it by 10 years, how hard was it? You have to look at foresight, empathy, compassion. You have to also understand that the PNM government was one of association. And I can attest to that once you had an opposing opinion, you were cast out. I mean, many of my colleagues in the university experienced that. And it's why so many minds and experts, I mean, can talk about experts. Imagine there was when Ghana and African nations started to develop their oil and gas sector, they searched for Trinidad and Tobago professionals because we have the record of the level of expertise and the depth of expertise and the years of expertise here. So we cannot, there's no denying political science, otherwise, political sociology, you name it, from an economic perspective. Any citizen that is living in Trinidad and Tobago understands that the results of the 2025 election indicated very clearly the level of frustration the population and the membership of the PNM as well felt with their own party. And there's no denying that, scientifically or otherwise, right? So that's why I say institutional disintegration, because every single sector, you name it, collapsed. And and there was no ambition, God forgive me for saying the word, but there was no ambition in the leadership of that administration to find ways to seek out innovation, to look for creative mechanisms of governance, to look at other models across the globe. There was a level of laziness, complacency, comfort, because they felt as though they were irremovable. Yes. Right? So the fact of the matter is, that is what has been inherited. And it makes me think, when I listen to, I consider him a good friend because I've known him quite a long time. When I listen to Dr. Emery Brown, who, I can say helped persons and formed a certain level of rationality in government for when crisis came. When I listen to him now, you couldn't stand in the middle of the road and take up a part of take up the role of neutrality in a world where volatility is the game of the day. You cannot exist in a world and want to be passive. You cannot exist in this world. The current political, geopolitical atmosphere provides and expects that people who has interests and has ambitions and who has visions to fulfill, and like Trinidad and Tobago, small island developing states, take a side and pick the side that is going to benefit you. Because as I said on another media house, I will say today, stay here, that we live in a world where political self-interest is number one game. And if you don't know how to play that game, then you are going to suffer serious consequences that will crush your nation. And it will, when you crush a nation, you're not just crushing an entity, you're crushing the lives and generations of people. So, I am saying that on the premise that there are great expectations of this administration. And I am not doubtful of the achievement of the great expectations, because there's also great leadership. And when there's compassion and empathy and concern and care and connectivity with the people, the goodwill cannot be squandered. At the end of the day, this is a legacy that has to be written, that doesn't talk about 5 years from now. It must be spoken about the same way we talk about Eugenia Charles 40 years after, 30 years after. We have to speak in the same manner about the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. So, and what the government under her did, and the leadership led, the vision achieved, and all of that. Because, Minister Kama Marad said it very, very eloquently. Transformation of the nation is what we all aspire for. And, if you consider yourself a real patriot that feels very proud of the passport and the red, white, and black, then you would understand that regardless of which government, and this government is which is in power, the success of this government leads to the success of a nation and a people. And if you love yourself, then how could you not want the government to be successful? Because it benefits you, the people. Bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Okay, guys, it is 9:23. Time really flies, as they say, when you're having fun. I mean, David, we've been talking for almost an hour and a half now. So I think this is a good time for us to take our closing remarks. There's plenty more we could discuss. I actually have a lot more questions that, we don't have time to get into, but that means we'll have to have another episode. Ken, maybe we can go across to you. Remarks?
Yeah, certainly. I just want to take off first, quite briefly, on one of the points Shane made, and that is institutional decay. There's so many wrongs under the previous 10 years that we don't talk enough about how the PNM government subverted many independent institutions, whether it was the EBC, the Industrial Court, the Chase out. A woman for whom I have great respect, Deborah Thomas Phillips, who is now our High Commissioner to Jamaica. And they chased her out because the PNM didn't like the judgments she was delivering and so on. And you look at Equal Opportunities Commission and so many institutions, the Integrity Commission, we look at the service commissions, Ms. Dr. Rowley intervening with respect to the Police Service Commission and going up to President House and so on. They subverted the independent institution and they politicized them, they made them PNM-oriented, and they have a critical role. Remember when Mr. Imbert spoke about shutting down these service commissions? These service commissions were put in the 1962 Independence Constitution to protect public officers from politicians. And so they did that systematically over those 10 years. And it's one of the points of the party in terms of the PNM's non-performance and how the country regressed under them. My closing thoughts are that we have seen measurable improvement in the quality of life. And a key area, a key factor in all of this is there's greater sense of hope in the society, and that is from all sectors of the society. One of the things I noted on Saturday at the Public Congress was the diversity of the crowd. And when I say diversity, I don't only mean ethnicity, which was very diverse, people of various ages, people of clearly of various income brackets and so on. Trinidad and Tobago is an extremely diverse society, very diverse, and that as a result provides challenges challenges in administration for any government. And the fact that a large body of people, a large cross-section of people rally around the administration means they identify with the government, they understand it's a work in progress. It will take some time, but there have been, as that publication with TT identifies, there has been multi-sectoral achievements. I mean, in every area of endeavor, including the urgent areas of the economy and security. One anticipates as we go forward to the second year, we'll see the petrochem matter, we'll see gas, we'll see the continued revival of the economy at 3% economic growth. We will see the wealth gap closing. That is a crucial thing. Healthcare continues to improve, and we didn't get time to discuss this pharmaceutical investigation by the PAAC, the Parliamentary Committee, but that's something, Alicia and Donnie, we could talk about at another time.
Definitely.
Yeah, because that is a critical thing, but I don't want to open that discussion now. But all of those are things that are happening, that are work in progress, and one anticipates that in a year's time, when you invite Shane and I again to review the second year of the government's administration, there would be much, and even more to report about successes of the government in office.
Thank you. That's veteran journalist Ken Ali, and you gave us a lot to look forward to, eh? And you know for sure we're going to have next April, we're going to run this series again. 2 years in, how's UNC doing? So Dr. Mohammed, over to you now for your closing remarks.
It's very simple, that I'm a strong believer that when you attain power, you sustain power. And I'm a strong believer in Machiavelli, and that you must do everything that is needed in order to sustain that power. So my only words is that having achieved the goodwill of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, Ken, you're a veteran, an expert in communication. There's no doubt there. That's the only thing I think that is going to carry the government. Don't use the word whole strain. That was a Rowley thing, right? It's something that you don't want. The country will understand as long as the communication is very clear. And I think people like yourself, Ken, is critical to that. The UNC knows how to win an election. The UNC knows how to govern. They've done it. I mean, the evidence is there. I mean, we don't have to go through all of it. The Pandey, the Prasad, the Sessa 1.0 Prasad now, the Sessa now. The bottom line is the UNC has always, I mean, that's a fact, right? The UNC has cared for people. That's what it was founded on, the principles of caring for people and wanting social justice and whatnot. When you hold the power, sustain the power. And the only way to sustain the power is to remain connected. And then glory is yours. That's me saying that as an individual, and also saying it as a political scientist, that my strong belief in Machiavellian politics is what I stand by. And the government is poised to do so much and do so much for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, multi-sectorally, and all at once, all at the same time. It's there in their hands. Just do what is needed to not give it away or let anybody steal it from you in the next 5 years. That's it. Sustain the power. And the goodwill of the people is hinged on what you do for them in the end of the day, because there has been a huge gap. We talked about it ad nauseum tonight. The institutional disintegration has caused enough anxiety, frustration, hurt, and pain, and a mass exodus of people that has left us drained. The UNC has the ability to reverse that.
Yeah. I mean, people forget easily, but remember, over the last 10 years, we have been talking about the brain drain that has taken place in Tobago, where many of the highly qualified people, they left for crime, lack of opportunity, all sorts of things, but they just fled out of the country.
Yep.
So, Donnie, over to you. Closing remarks.
Right. So I think over the last year, the evidence shows that the Prime Minister has been very steadfast in her position with regards to how she deals with things. She has empirically shown that she's not afraid to stand alone in a decision. And these are the decisions that she has made that, whilst we understand collectivism, There's also the benefits of individuality by even not separating ourselves from certain things. But we will have benefits to ourselves, and sometimes we have to seek our own interests. And in that, I specifically want to end with one thing that actually developed today. We have seen the president of Guyana, Dr. Ali, actually write and complain to CARICOM on the acceptance of the Venezuelan president, in contrast to their position with Guyana. And he is asking CARICOM to account for their position when they have not supported Guyana as a member of CARICOM with their issues with their neighbor Venezuela, but they are embracing Venezuela right now. And this is aside from Trinidad and CARICOM, but we are seeing the behavior of CARICOM now come into question from another government. And I believe we're going to see some things playing out, but I think we are seeing now that the decision our Prime Minister made to question certain things about CARICOM against the many naysayers and even her fellow heads of state, we are seeing the behavior of CARICOM now as coming up as questionable. And I think this proves more so that our Prime Minister is not afraid to call things out for what they are. That is one of the true hallmarks of a good leader who looks out for their people and their country. That will be my closing remark.
Okay, Donnie, thank you. And all I have left to say to everyone is thank you, thank you, thank you. This wraps up our series 1 year in. How's UNC doing? This month, what we've been focusing on is a review of the performance of the government over the last year. And we've had several, I think it may have been 3 or 4 sessions where we discussed that, right? We also have some videos to put out before this month is up. Tonight, we spoke on many things. We spoke on leadership. We spoke on the economy, jobs, national security, housing, agriculture. We highlighted some of the main gains in these sectors, and there is so much more. So I want to thank again Dr. Shane Mohammed, Ken Ali, and also Senator Brian Begg, who joined us tonight and shared their insights. Certainly, it was a very, very interesting discussion. Tonight, April the 28th, is a significant day. It marks exactly 1 year since the United National Congress Coalition of Interests secured a resounding victory and became the new government of Trinidad and Tobago. So once more, we say congratulations to the Honorable Prime Minister and the government for a very successful year of governance. And I will end again by saying thank you to everyone who joined us, our panelists, those of you who tuned in, who came on the Zoom, who was on social media, members of the media. I saw members of the media online with us. Thank you very much. Better days are not coming. They are already here, and they will only get better. So guys, thank you. Good night. Tune in again next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. for another episode of One on One. Stay safe.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.